Across one of the more picturesque California horizons at sunset, you'll see seemingly endless rows of vines. On those vines, the grapes that will soon transform into some of the world's most lusted after alcohol. But as growing seasons shift and California deals with historic drought, what does it mean for an industry that's responsible for $25.9 billion in California's economy? The food forecast for Napa Valley wine starts right now. About 40 miles northeast of the famous Golden Gate Bridge, you'll find the magical sliver of land in Northern California known as Napa Valley, a part of the planet that has the perfect microclimates for premium wine. But what is a microclimate, you might ask? Well, it's when the climate of a very small area differs from the climate of a surrounding area. Here's climatologist Noah Diffenbaugh with more.
There's a lot of microclimate within a region like Napa, and it really gets down to very small areas where, even at the scale of a single farm, a single winery, you have many different microclimates.
It's a very small area, so Napa Valley produces only 4% of the wine made throughout California. It's 30 miles long and 5 miles wide at its widest point.
Just weeks before harvest, Stephanie Honig of Honig Wines takes us deep into that maze of her family's vineyard in Rutherford.
I feel like these are my friends because Cabernet's my favorite.
Oh, good.
They're all my friends. Hello,
Good.
friends.
Well, Cabernet loves you too. But this is a really cool time of year. So these are Cabernet Sauvignon grapes that are turning color.
Right.
And it starts out as all green grapes, and then it starts gradually turning purple or red, and then bunches are maturing at different times. So if we came back here in a couple days, we'd see a lot more purple than we do.
That process is called veraison. It's one of many barometers built into farming wine grapes that can tell a scientific story.
And that's the other thing about Napa, and just not in this vineyard, but anywhere, you can have such a variance, just in the soil composition from one row to the next, but you're also dealing with sun exposure.
And that's where my fascination with this all came to be. Those microclimates changing everything. How can one Chardonnay that's made just a mile away from another taste totally different? The valley from St. Helena to Stag's Leap is best for Bordeaux varietals, like Cabernet and Sauvignon Blanc. Now, closer to the bay, thanks to prevailing winds and fog, Chardonnay and Pinot Noir grow better.
Well, we're right here, down by the bay. This is the Napa River watershed.
That's why a Chardonnay does better, because you need that marine
It seems to like the cooler weather. So most of the Chardonnay growing has kind of shifted south over time.
Okay.
So, cheers.
David Graves, the winemaker at Saintsbury Winery in Carneros, is also a self-proclaimed weather nut.
Different growing seasons give us different results. That's why fine wine has a vintage date.
Like many of the other 700 winemakers in the region, David has been increasingly concerned about protecting their investment.
You can see they're all very vertical. We like to array the leaves in the trellis so they get good sun exposure, but not too much. Because if we have a hot spell, these leaves that are partially shading these clusters are going to be really important to keep the grapes from getting literally sunburned.
To preserve the grapes, David and his fellow winemakers have been keeping an eye on fluctuating daytime and nighttime temperatures.
Certainly, to ignore the prospect of climate change would be, I think, unwise for all of us.
There have been studies on Napa Valley specifically when it comes to change. Check out this first one that shows the number of frost-free nights decreasing from 1960 until 2000. At the same time, the quality of wine increases. So a shift in the season there actually helping the quality of wine. It seems counterintuitive, but what about that epic California drought? Well, look at this map. That drought, the extreme part of it, is actually south and east of Napa, but it had to have affected the vineyards, right?
I think I was reading, it's like the drought can, in some cases, actually help because it stresses to a certain degree.
Well, it depends on what you're farming and how you're farming it.
Right.
So if you want to stress it and you want small yields and high concentration fruit and high quality wine, that's what you want.
Right.
But if you're trying to grow a commodity and you're selling by the ton and making a lot, then it's going to really affect you.
So wait, warming and drought are helping make wine better?
In Napa, they're kind of in this sweet spot. at the moment. But I would emphasize that it's not just the climate. It really does require good soils, and it requires the people knowing how to take advantage of the particular conditions. And within the context of global warming and climate change, it's going to require sort of keeping up with that moving target. Because the one thing we do know is that the climate that we have now is different than the climate that we had 50 years ago. And we know that the climate 50 years from now will be different than the climate of today.
Diffenbaugh was part of a study in 2011 that had quite the headline. Here's what it read. The average temperature in Napa Valley during the growing season could increase as much as 2 degrees Fahrenheit, the number of hot days increasing by 10. As a result, the amount of land with historically hospitable growing conditions could shrink by half over the next 3 decades.
Yeah, if we kept growing the same thing and the climate warms considerably, that's a true statement. But it ignores the adaptation part of the story.
No matter what happens, Stephanie, David, so many other winemakers are already adapting so Napa can keep being Napa.
So these are western bluebirds.
Instead of pesticides, they house hundreds of bluebirds and owls.
We used to flood irrigate years ago, right? And then we went to drip irrigating, and then we went into something called a pressure bomb, where we measure the moisture in each stem. So we would come out and check once a week and see based on the moisture, and then water only when necessary. And now we have a meter that measures in real time out in the vineyard through Bluetooth, so we don't water at all.
Okay.
But when we do need water, it's only when it's necessary.
The Honigs run most of their vineyard with solar power. They're constantly looking for ways to farm sustainably.
Things are changing and it's affecting a lot of crops, but because we have such a unique microclimate here, we don't know how it's going to affect us. And it's not like we're ever going to pick up and leave. We're just going to change and farm in the way that will continue to make great wine.
Right. But will it be enough? In the next food forecast, we'll check out 2 farms that took sustainability one step farther. Dry and biodynamic farming. No irrigation, no machines. What could be the future of your wine?
It's something that you either do it now or you do it when you're forced to do it.
We'll explain, don't worry. But for now, this is the food forecast for Napa Valley wine.